Welcome to It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and early 80s. This is Kara Siegel. I'd like to welcome in Steve Kanovsky into the It's Been How Long podcast studio today. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Kara, it's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah. So here we are, 40 plus years after high school. What are you up to these days?
We work, family, still. My wife and I have been married for 29 years. Got a almost 27-year-old daughter, almost 25-year-old son. I'm still working. I in the healthcare, life science, medical device world. I've been in pharma. I've been in healthcare and medical devices basically my whole career. So I'm still working, although coming to the end of that, thinking what my last step or next step might be. But I'm a lawyer with GE Healthcare, which makes medical devices like MRs and X-rays, ultrasounds. I've been with them for 11 years or so. And still working, doing a bunch of things, social, trying to be physically active, travel when I can, although a couple of year hiatus of not much travel because of COVID, but that's kind of what we're doing.
Okay. So if you could pick an activity to do tomorrow to, take a day off and do it, what would it be?
Well, we're in Massachusetts for the summer, and we're lucky enough to be on the water. And so, it would kind of depend on the weather. That, to go kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding would be really nice. But one of the things I end up, it's kind of almost a full-time exercise job, is I've started doing triathlons.
Yeah.
So I would either swim or bike or run, to train for it, or I'd, do a couple of them. But I was able to swim in the harbor yesterday. I went for a bike ride today, so probably do something along those lines.
That's great. So did you do this back in high school?
Oh God, no. I swam a little bit. I moved to Cherry Hill for sophomore year. So I grew up in Rochester, New York, and I swam in Rochester, New York. Get to Cherry Hill, there's no pool. So I stopped swimming. And so I swam, but then, it was much later that I started running. And then I thought, well, I can run and I can swim, and, I know how to ride a bike. So I started running maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and started doing triathlons maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
That's great.
And now, I do a number of them a year. I did one a couple of weeks ago. I'm doing a little one this coming weekend. Got a couple more planned for the rest of the year.
Those are called sprint triathlons? Right?
Yeah, well, I'm doing a local sprint this weekend, so it's pretty short. But I've done sprint, and then the next length is Olympic, and then I've done those. And actually, 3 weeks ago, I did a half Ironman. With my college roommate. We've started racing together, which is pretty fun.
That's fantastic. That is an accomplishment at 60 years of age.
Yeah. Well,
pat on the back to you, my friend.
I was doing this. It was a half Ironman in the Finger Lakes in New York. Yeah. And I'm doing the run, and this guy comes back. Oh, absolutely beautiful. Yeah. A guy comes up next to me and he says, do you mind can I ask you how old you are? And I said, yeah, I'm 61. He's like, you're my hero. My dad is 61. I'm like, okay, great, buddy. He said, my dad's 61 and can barely walk to the refrigerator, and you're doing this race. And I said, yeah, but you're on the first lap of your run, and I'm on the second. Or I said, I'm on the first lap and you're on the second. He's like, doesn't matter, you're going to finish. So that was kind of cool. Yeah. And as I said, my roommate from college and I have done these for the last couple of years, and it's a great getaway, and be with a close friend.
That's great.
That's probably what I would do. If I could do anything tomorrow, I'd probably train or do something along the lines of a triathlon.
That's great. So what clubs or teams, activities did you do back in high school?
it would have been mostly performing arts, concert band, wind ensemble, marching band, and then theatrics, working on the stage crew for shows, the fall and the spring shows with Bob Nation and the whole theater scene. So that was primarily, I think I was on the morning broadcast team, that kind of stuff. But it was mostly music and theater at that time, like not sports activities, nothing physical at that point.
Well, marching band was a team in its own right. Yeah. And remind everybody what instrument you played.
Clarinet.
There you
Clarinet. Go. I was in the same section as Debbie Era. She was our section leader. And then, a bunch of friends. That's probably the biggest or strongest friend group that I had then, and continuing on was from the music program. So that was probably the big thing.
Did you have a job in high school?
Yeah. I worked at McDonald's. Worked at the McDonald's on Route 70 in Marlton, just going towards the circle, towards Olga's. I lived in Old Orchard, so it was pretty close. Worked at McDonald's starting, sometime in sophomore year, or maybe right after sophomore year, and worked there throughout high school. Worked, making burgers and fries and, the whole thing. And it was close. It was reasonably lucrative and free food. And, I could basically schedule the hours around being in marching band, around doing plays or whatever. So I think I actually worked there even like through first year of college, because I could call up and say, I can do 15 hours during a break, and they'd say, great, come on in.
That's great.
Yeah.
What did you do after graduation?
So after high school, went to the University of Pennsylvania, went to Penn in Philadelphia, and finished up in 4 years as a chemistry and biophysics major. Wanted to study science, did a good science program there, and then I went to work. I didn't want to go to med school. I didn't want to go to grad school. So I went to work for Merck, pharmaceutical company outside of Philadelphia. I mean, Cherry Hill, Penn, and then I've stayed in the Philadelphia area ever since. So I've been around there the whole time. I worked for Merck for about 10 years. I had couple jobs in research, like at the bench, working as a chemist, as a biologist. I worked at Merck in regulatory affairs, dealing with the FDA, and did some project management. And then while I was there, I started going to law school at night. So I went to Temple at night and got my law degree, and then left Merck and went into private practice at Drinker Biddle, a Philadelphia law firm. And I was in their Princeton office. So I started practicing law like early 30s, not like go to college, go to law school. So I'd already worked for 10 years when I started practicing law. And then I was in private practice for about 5 years, and then went back to the pharmaceutical industry. And I've stayed in healthcare and pharma and life science, med device ever since.
Okay. That's interesting. So what do you do for them? Are you like defending them against lawsuits or filing patents or?
I've had a bunch of different roles at pharma companies, and now I'm at GE Healthcare right now. And as I said, they make MRs, X-rays, CT machines, ultrasounds. And, at various companies, I was in the litigation department. So we would help defend litigation against the company from the inside. I was a compliance officer for a while to help the company make sure they adhered to all the compliance requirements about interactions with healthcare professionals and billing. And, healthcare compliance is a big deal with the US government and foreign governments. So I would help the company make sure they were compliant. And then a lot of my roles I would be the head lawyer for a product segment or a business segment. So I'd either be like a business unit general counsel, or I was a general counsel for a small company. Right now, I'm the deputy general counsel at GE Healthcare. So like right now, I've got all of the global lawyers at GE Healthcare reporting to me. So I help support all the businesses in all of the countries around the world.
Wow.
So, it's nice because I get a global view. I've had some global travel, as I said, not much the last couple of years because of COVID, but global team, and it's pretty interesting. And then special projects come up, like working on a big mergers and acquisition deal or big litigation. Or over the last year, GE Healthcare spun off from GE. So, big GE, which had all sorts of businesses, is slowly spinning off some of its businesses. So I worked for a year on getting the company spun off, and now we're an independent company. And some similar issues, but also different now that we're separate from the old big parent.
Well, that's neat. That's pretty wild, being in charge of a global group of lawyers. Impressive.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the best things about it is be able to meet people globally, interact, different cultures, different business ways of doing business. Even in the last 10 years or so, I've been really fortunate. Been to China a couple times, Japan, the Middle East, Europe, Latin America. A couple months ago, I was in India for the first time, and then had the difficult job of a stopover in Paris for 4 days on the way back. So it was hard work.
There you go. So where are you living now?
We live in Bucks County in New Hope, for the most part, and then we also have a place in Massachusetts that's not on Cape Cod, but near Cape Cod. It's right on the water. It was in my wife's family before. Now my wife and I have it. So kind of mid-May to mid-October, we come to Massachusetts. I've got a remote role, completely remote, because my team is global, so I can pretty much work wherever. So mid-May to mid-October, so we're in Massachusetts, and then the rest of the year we're in New Hope. Although we haven't quite connected yet. I found out recently that Carol Becker, a high school classmate of ours, also has a summer place near here. So
okay.
We definitely have to connect up here sometime. And then in the Bucks County area, there's a bunch of people that live nearby, and I still have family. My parents are still in Cherry Hill. They're in Voorhees now. My sisters moved back to Cherry Hill, so we're close to family. My wife's family's mostly in Philadelphia as well.
Well, that's great. So out of all these travels throughout the world, which is pretty extensive, do you have a favorite place? Maybe not for business, maybe a favorite place to, and it doesn't have to be international. It could be within the country.
This would be near and dear to Rob Thurston's heart. London is terrific, and having been to Paris recently, Paris is a special place. But probably the place, and I want to do more in Japan because I just thought that was all really cool. But the place that I would absolutely go back to tomorrow would be Iceland. We had a chance, 10 years ago or so for my birthday. My wife said, "Where do you want to go? What do you want to do?" And I said, "Let's go to Iceland." And we spent a week there, and it was just it was spectacular. The countryside, the people, nature. Just I'd go back to Iceland, and I want to go in the summer and see more of the island, and I want to go in the winter and see the northern lights. And I think that's a great place to go.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. So through your travels, have you met anybody famous?
If I met anybody famous, I could say I was in the same room with Tom Cruise once.
Okay.
Were
you taller than him?
Yes, barely, but definitely yes. And this was while I was at Penn. I also met Jimmy Stewart, the old Jimmy Stewart actor, like It's a Wonderful Life. I met him through a Penn connection at one point. Probably the one that's more regular is Sam Waterston, the actor. He also sometimes comes to this community for the summers, for parts of the summers. So I've been to some parties. My wife knows him a little bit better, but I've talked about some of his movies with him. So that's probably about the
Grace and Frankie and Law and Order.
Yeah.
That's great.
Killing Fields, going way back.
Wow.
The Newsroom, brilliant show as well.
So is there a class or a teacher at East that influenced you well beyond our high school days?
A couple maybe. I would say that Bob Nation in the theater department, because I ended up doing not acting, but I was backstage for shows at Cherry Hill in high school, and I was on the stage crew or the stage manager for I think 9 shows at Penn. So I got involved in theater at Penn and did that quite a bit, and then I did some theater after college in Philadelphia. There was a local group that did Gilbert and Sullivan, and through a Penn connection, I met people and was on the stage crew there for a number of years. They used to perform at the Academy of Music in Philadelphia. So it was like big theater, big sets. And actually it's through that group that I met my wife. So it's like that whole theater connection, has been pretty rewarding. And I love going to the theater. So that was pretty valuable. The music department, because there was so much going on: concert band, wind ensemble, marching band, orchestra. So I'd say like all of the people in the music department. Ron Robinson was my clarinet teacher as well as the conductor. So that was one thing. It was hard at the time, but Mr. Obriza in English, I didn't love it at the time, but I can look back and say I'm a better writer because as a result of that. And now as a lawyer, like it's really a skill that I didn't appreciate it. As I said, didn't appreciate it at the time, but it was probably had a pretty long lasting impact. And probably the last would have been Jim Gallagher was AP bio teacher. I had a love of science and studied science at Penn and got advanced degrees and all that kind of stuff. And so they're probably the ones. I know that there were math teachers and history teachers and language teachers that had an impact, but those are the names that kind of come off the top of my head.
Very good. Did you have a high school sweetheart?
No, not really. In looking back, I probably didn't have the emotional maturity to really do that. And, it was more of a social group of people, men, women, more of a collective group than any one relationship or anything. So no, and not really as much in college either, a little bit in college, but it was more after that where I had pretty much only one really serious relationship, and we're married now. So,
how did you meet your wife?
So I was talking about this theater group in Philadelphia that did Gilbert and Sullivan, and I was backstage, and she had joined a year earlier, and she was backstage. So we met. She was a kindergarten teacher in Chestnut Hill, and did theater as well. And we met through Savoy and dated for a pretty long while, and then got married.
All right. Where are your kids today?
Our daughter is. She went to Kenyon College in Ohio and studied English literature, and she now is in Center City, Philadelphia, as she works in publishing with academic journals in arts and humanities, living in Center City. She's working remotely. Her company's based in the UK. But she's doing well, and working remotely, she can also spend time in Massachusetts during the summer with us. So that's been really nice. And when we're in New Hope, we're pretty close to her. And our son is he was a mechanical engineer and computer science major at Tufts, and now works as a software engineer outside of Boston. So he's living in Cambridge, and he's close to us when we're up here. So they're doing really well, and they've got jobs and friends and stuff going on. So
that's great. So do you have friends from East you're still in touch with? You mentioned some folks from the band.
Probably the closest are Eric Muller, Gary Snegroff, we get together every couple months and have a Zoom call for 90 minutes or longer, just to connect, which has been really great. And actually, pandemic aside, the ease of doing more of this video interaction, nobody really thought about doing it. So we're probably a lot more connected now in the last couple of years than we were. We were always really close, and we continue to be, but to have a video session where you can goof around, and it's just a long, and a three-way conversation. So Eric and Gary primarily. I was out in California on business and saw Gary and had lunch with Frank Vittori as well.
Oh wow.
So that was a lot of fun. Sharon Linden, now Sharon Mayo. Our legal careers have kind of overlapped, so we're in touch a little bit more recently, because she left the FDA and is in private practice, and our company and her firm have some work together. So I've been in touch with her. Julie Dollinger, pretty regularly. Rob Thurston lived nearby in Doylestown for a while, so we would stay connected. I'm not a big social media, Facebook participant, but I keep in touch with him and private message every once in a while. So I'm keen to visit him when I get to England next, because I know that he'll have all the good spots scoped out.
And I secured with my conversation with Rob, I secured all of us in our class a free first coffee when you
okay.
So just make sure you claim that when you go.
I'm gonna hold them to that.
Yep, for sure. Anyone you lost touch with? Anyone you lost touch with after graduation?
Yeah, I mean, a number of people that if you, for instance, unfortunately, we were talking, like, we saw each other at a reunion, and it's kind of nice we picked this up now. And I know that if I was in Chapel Hill, we'd go have lunch and have a great time. And if
you'd come to my bar
as the opportunity, I'll come to your bar. But it's that kind of thing, that people were friendly. A bunch of the band, theater people. I kind of lost touch with a lot of them. Unfortunately, through some of the circumstances, got more in touch recently with Robin Garland, and it's good to connect with people that I would consider friends, even if you've lost touch for 10 or 20 or 30 years. So that kind of close acquaintances at the time, and then just becoming more distant, not with any intention, but as you go off to college, as you have families, as you move various places, that kind of thing.
So do you have a standout memory from high school? Could be a high, could be a low, could be a friendship interaction. Anything that comes to mind?
The theater stuff, any of the shows, like there's specific things at shows that were interesting, marching band and that kind of stuff. I have to say, like, I look back, one singular moment may have been this gong show spring of senior year. And, it's just, I remember Bob Skinner was emceeing, and a bunch of us put together a kind of pit band to play. And it was the night that the U.S. Olympic hockey team beat the Russians in the 1980 Winter Olympics. So it's, it sticks out because it was fun, it was different, and it was, historically memorable from a athletic perspective. But, definitely that. I remember graduation, just the enormity of 750 people on the football field or whatever. It's one thing to say we have a big class, and our kids went to a high school with 100 people in their graduating class. They're like, wow, my class is big. Like, you don't know big until you, like, a 1980 graduation at Cherry Hill East in the football field. Or whatever. Those are some of the memories, things in specific classes, but probably, anything related to the performing arts would probably be a memory. Any number of marching band antics would be pretty memorable. So.
All right. Okay.
I think that's about it.
So, anything you wish classmates knew about you then and or now?
Anything I wish classmates. That's hard.
Yeah.
I think that mean, I'd like to think that I was reasonably fun loving at the time, and that people either knew that then or know that now.
I would concur.
Yeah, I think that I don't know, Kara. I don't think I have an answer to that. I think that, you know, I mean, I'm passionate about my profession. I'm passionate about my family. Uh, you know, I hope that I'm a good husband and parent, and, you know, family member to the parts of my family that are still around, and as a friend, you know, loyal. And I think, you know, there's nothing specific. My big secret is, you know, that I'm doing half Ironman triathlons, probably, that people wouldn't necessarily know that, but you know, nothing else. I am thinking about retiring, you know, sometime in the not too distant future. Like, I haven't quite figured out the path, and my maybe, see, I don't want to commit to this, but I have planned on learning the banjo after I retire. So, you know, come back in 5 years and ask me whether I've actually learned the banjo or not. And I play no stringed instruments, so this will be learning a stringed instrument from scratch. No ukulele, no guitar, nothing. I'm going to try to learn the banjo.
I'm going to put this down, make sure I come back and ask you
whether I've picked up the banjo, and I will sit here and I promise not to do not
deliverance.
Yeah, no, not deliverance. You know, I pretty much had to promise the family that I would not do that.
Not do that.
But yeah,
that's great.
I'll let you know.
Thank you. Have you been back in the building? When did you go? Why did you go? What did it feel like?
I think I can honestly say I have not been back in the building in 40 years. Like, I can't, you know, maybe in the year or two after, because my sister was 2 years younger. So, you know, maybe there was an occasion. I'm sure I was back in the 2 years, because she would have been doing something. I would have gone back to see a concert or a show or whatever. But probably not after that. Now, I drive past it pretty regularly. My parents, you know, as I said, they were in Old Orchard. Now they're in Voorhees, and, you know, I probably drove past in May, but, you know, I don't think that I've been in the building in, you know, 30 plus years.
Wow.
I was listening to Jeff, you know, relate how he was telling Sam how to get from from B wing to C wing or whatever, and, like, I could probably do it instinctually, but I don't know what any of the wings are called anymore. Like, I forget which one's B and which one's C. Like, I know there's cutovers. Like, I could probably do it, but not. He seemed really attuned. Like, he had this down, committed to memory. I could never do that.
Yeah. I don't think I could either. So we're back in 1980, and you've just graduated, and you're looking out 40 years. Is this where you saw yourself?
No, I mean, no, because I was pretty sure I was going to go and do a straight science thing, like pure science. I was going to go to college and study science, and then go into research and probably go for a PhD. It was going to all be science. And it was not until, you know, I did that in college, and I worked in a lab, and I got a science degree, and then I worked in a lab at Merck, and I realized that I didn't want to be a PhD researcher. And I started looking for, like, what I was going to do next. And I think the law interested me, you know, from a kind of analytical skill set perspective. I knew people that were lawyers, you know, Eric Muller particularly. I learned about it. I didn't really have a role model for, like, going to work and then going to law school, but I was able to go to law school at night, which meant if it didn't work out, I still had a job, and that was fine. And it led, like, I don't think I could have either also predicted I would go to law school, and then I'd go to a firm, and then I'd leave a firm and go to a company, and then I'd go to another company. Like, I couldn't have necessarily scripted that part out. It's kind of been taking advantage of opportunity when it comes up, and making a move, sometimes a risky move. Like, I went to one company, and I thought they were going to spin out, and I was going to work with the spinoff. It was going to be great. And then after 9 months, I realized some of the people weren't the people I wanted to work with. Some of the management changed, and I left. So it was a kind of unexpected career detour, speed bump. And that stuff, you wouldn't plan that out going back 30 years ago or 40 years ago. But no, I don't think I would have predicted that I'd be a lawyer in healthcare when in June of 1980.
Yeah. So was there if you could have crafted your perfect career, would you have been, on Broadway making sets, or something else?
I do like where I ended up, although it was circuitous and a little bit of happenstance. But if I look back, there were two things that if I were to start a different career, two things I might have thought about doing differently. Again, kind of analytically based. I love the idea of architecture, like just to be an architect. I don't know if I have the creativity for it, but that kind of cross between analytical thinking and a little bit of creativity and strategy and execution and vision. So, looking at architecture would have been one thing. And then, a Broadway producer, or like getting involved. Again, I'd be interested in performing arts, but not as an actor by any means, but to be on the business side or the kind of the backstage side in theater would have been really cool. I have to say, now the dream job, now that I am practicing law, like if I ever had an opportunity to be the general counsel of a Major League Baseball team, I would do that tomorrow. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. But there's only like 30 of them, and I'm not in that group. So I don't think there's much hope of that happening at this point.
So did you enjoy high school?
Yeah. I mean, it was I enjoyed high school, and for me, things got better in college, and it got better after college, and it got, so I wouldn't say that high school was the best. It wasn't the pinnacle of for me of anything, but I did enjoy it. I don't look back and say, it was a miserable experience. There were miserable classes. There were things that were less enjoyable, but yeah, I enjoyed it. It was for the first part of sophomore year for me was a little hard because I had moved from Rochester, New York to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, just as a sophomore in high school, meeting new people and finding a social group and getting acclimated and all that. I mean, that wasn't easy, in hindsight. Maybe I wish that had gone a little bit more smoothly. Think of a coming into a big school where people know each other because they've gone to middle school together, they've been there together as freshmen already, and trying to break into that. But it took a little bit of time, but not that long. So I'd say, yeah, I enjoyed high school, but it wasn't. Things have continued to get better in many ways since then.
That's great. So do you have a piece of advice that you would have given your 18-year-old self at the time, or maybe you gave it to your 18-year-old kids?
I probably did give it to our kids, and I look back and I think what I regret, one thing I regret is I didn't go to Europe until I was in my 30s. And I would our daughter spent a year abroad, studying abroad. We've taken our family and we've traveled abroad as much as we can. And I would look back and I should have taken a semester, junior year abroad or a semester abroad or something in college. I look back and regret not being more global earlier. And maybe not having a global part of my career where I'd go work for a company and be overseas. So I think it's both about travel from just the end result of being in different places, and just culturally being more aware globally of our place in the global community. So I think that I would look back and say, whatever it is, figure out a way to spend a semester abroad or travel after college, or make it more of a priority earlier on. And as I said, I didn't really do it until I was in my 30s, and I wish I had started a lot sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that for sure. So we're
Yeah.
calling this the Fast and Furious finish. And as I keep saying, it's not usually fast or furious, but here we go. So did you have a favorite TV show, movie, or book back from our high school days?
I'm trying to remember the TV shows. Probably not TV, and maybe Saturday Night Live, like the early days.
Yeah.
Not so much a book. I mean, movie. I was thinking about, like, what are the movies that I would have seen or gone to multiple times, and it would have been. I've heard it mentioned already. The Monty Python, the Holy Grail, obviously, and I do recall, you know, more than a handful of times going to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show. With the whole spectacle of do whatever you're going to do and then go see a movie at 11:30 or 12 o'clock, and people dressing up and whatever. So those are probably what would come to mind.
Yeah.
Not the highest, like they're not Academy Award winners by any means, but
they do stick in the memory for sure.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite musical group, an artist, or a genre?
It's I was looking back, it's kind of hard to pinpoint like what was high school versus early college, like exactly. But it was big. I was then and still am a big Beatles fan. Squeeze, Elvis Costello, some of the kind of new wave-ish stuff was probably the high point. I think that definitely is bleeding into a little bit more of college. But the Police, that kind of genre, I guess.
So did you have a favorite place to eat or hang out? And have you been back there? If it's even there?
Probably
the McDonald's that you worked in?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's still there, so I could obviously go back. But Holly Ravine, and I've driven past there, and it sadly no longer exists. Ponzio's, and I've definitely been back there. Olga's, like the diner scene, the ice cream scene. Like, what else do you do?
Yeah.
16, 17, 18, it wasn't, we weren't going to bars or anything.
Yeah.
Legally.
All right. So let me get this here.
Yeah.
So where are we? There we go.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody can see it. All right. Did you like your picture and your quote?
What I first noticed in looking at that, Joe Camerling's right next to me, and we were a pen together too. So yeah, I mean, there were a bunch of classmates went to Penn, so it was like little mini reunions for 4 years when we were in West Philly. I look back at the picture and I look younger, and my hair's longer than it was now, but the picture's not bad. The lapel's a little wide, the tie's a little fat, but it's not a bad picture. And realizing that was probably
1980.
taken when I was 17, like the summer before. Yeah, well, but 79.
79,
like, it's a long
you were
time
styling.
Yeah. I should have come with like the really skinny tie and the slick back hair or something like that. But
do your Elvis
I think the quote was
impression.
something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think the quote was Churchill, something about stumbling over the truth and then ignoring it and continuing on. So it's not bad. Like, I don't remember why I picked that or what else. Maybe it should have been funnier or more thoughtful, but not bad. I'm not embarrassed by it. If at worst somebody could say, what did it mean? And were you being too cerebral or something? Like, I could live with that. It was nothing bad. I'll be okay with it.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if you've listened to this. I have a quest, which is, why did our yearbook have an old Western theme? Have any idea?
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea. Although, no, I mean, this is going way back. there's a picture in there, if I remember right, of Julie Dollinger and Doug Byrne.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Most comic people, or, whatever it was. And in that picture, I remember like somebody has a bandana and a cowboy hat or something. Okay, so why were they dressed like that? Was this a yearbook thing, or is the whole yearbook designed around Julie and Doug?
Oh, that is the best reason I've heard. I'm going to interview Doug tomorrow. I'm going to ask him.
Yeah, I mean, you should. Like, and seeing, I recalled that picture. I hadn't
That's
seen
impressive.
It, and who knows how long. But like, why does Julie have a hairdryer? I guess that's like the closest thing to a weapon. And like, why were they dressed that way? I have no idea.
Well, that's the best thing I've heard so far. And that's after talking to Deborah Smead, who was one of the editors, and she didn't know either. So.
And you haven't released that episode yet, but she didn't have an explanation either.
She did not. So we're still, it is my quest.
So lastly, minds want to know.
Yeah, exactly. So lastly, anything you want to tell someone or everyone from school that might be listening? Final parting shot, as they say.
Final parting shot. First to you, Kara, for doing this, and giving of your time and energy to connect with all these people and kind of put us back in touch, which, I think is really cool. Just the idea of looking back 40 years, in a thoughtful way, and then comparing people's perceptions and common memories. And, again, there was just one quick story. There was, I was listening to Jeff's because that was the first one out. And he was talking about meeting George Thorogood at the Phillies game.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward, I don't know if it's the same night or not. It very well could have been. Eric Muller and I go to the Phillies game one night. And I at Penn, I met somebody who worked in the front office, and she got us tickets. So we have really good seats. We're at the Phillies game. We're sitting there. And all of a sudden, we see our picture on the Jumbotron. Like, why are we on the Jumbotron? And we realize George Thorogood is sitting right behind us. So, he was the reason why we were on the Jumbotron. But, hearing the Phillies and George Thorogood from Jeff reminded me of when Eric and I were there. But I think the message, so first of all, thanks to you again. Yep. The message would be, to a lot of my friends and acquaintances, it was great knowing you 4 years ago, and let's try to get in touch. And, I'd love to reconnect, whether it's probably not through Facebook, but reconnect and, and reacquaint and get reacquainted. There were great people in high school, and, for various really good reasons, we've all lost touch, but maybe this is a way for us to get back in touch together.
All right. So I was not going to ask this, but because this is the end, but I got to ask this. So Eric tells a story, and of people who shall remain nameless, did you climb a sign when you went on a band trip?
No, it's completely true. It's completely true. Yeah. There was a band trip, like a music competition
to Pennsylvania, I think.
Mill Hall, Pennsylvania, like Harrisburg-ish or something. I don't know. And we were 4 to a room. They were bunking 4 to a room or something. And I remember that Gary Snegroff and I were in the same room, and we were mischievous and figure out a way how to get out of a second floor Ramada or Holiday Inn or something, which was really easy because you kind of hung over and the ground was only like 4 feet below you, drop down. So now we're outside, and there was a sign there, welcome whatever. And what do enterprising 17-year-olds do is we went and reordered the words on the sign to be something other than what management had intended. So, I forget what the original wording was and what the
final wording
was. And then we had to figure out a way to get back in, which was not completely successful in that we got caught coming back in, like, breaking curfew, not getting caught sneaking out, but getting caught sneaking back in, and had to sit in the hallway for half an hour as like public detention or something. But yeah, so now Eric gave me up, I've given Gary up, but true story. He didn't make it up.
Okay. Well, thanks for confirming that.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I can't thank you enough for joining me and sharing your memories and telling us where you are. And you have a great time up in perhaps a little cooler weather there up north. And yeah, I hope we can connect again.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. This has been great.
Thanks for joining me on It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and the early 80s. A shout out to my cousin Brad Corbett, whose podcast We Weren't Friends in High School inspired me to do this podcast and whose advice and encouragement have been so helpful. Thanks also to my husband, Randy Coughdale, who read all the fine print on the podcast hosting website so I wouldn't have to. And thanks to Jeff Lyons, content consultant and guinea pig, and to Deborah Smead, also content consultant. And thank you to all our classmates who are listening in. See you next week.